Livia, let's start now. Dear panelists and participants, warm greetings from Switzerland. We are back with another episode of the Skills Bridge Masterclass, but in a new format. And to get in partnership with Sub-Saharan African Skills and Apprenticeships Stakeholders Network, as well as with African Development Bank. I am Ashwani Agarwal, Team Leader for Skills Policy Systems and Digitalization at ILO Headquarters, Geneva. And it's my pleasure to moderate today's masterclass. This episode will focus on RPL and Africa. The reason is that our partner, SASASNet, considers having a robust RPL system is crucial to utilize Africa's workforce potential. However, many countries are facing challenges in implementing RPL, so it has requested the ILO to organize a capacity building session for RPL practitioners in Africa. Let me tell you about the new format of this masterclass. In our last masterclass, more than 900 participants from all over the world joined. However, this time we have made it very restricted to the RPL practitioners from the countries covered by the SASASNet in Africa. So only we are aiming to make this session interactive, discuss with them the successes and challenges faced by them in implementing RPL systems. We also have 3 international RPL experts to address your queries. Now I present the agenda for the event. First of all, we have the honor to have the opening remarks by the Chief of the Skills and Employability Branch from the ILO, Mr. Srinivas Reddy. After the opening remarks, we will have a discussion with the 3 panelists about the key challenges and potential solutions to implementing RPL. This discussion will be based on the questions that you have sent to us while registering for the event. Then in the second part of that discussion, we will allow you to directly ask questions to the panelists. Finally, we have Mr. Usman Sila, Secretary General of SASASNet, who will deliver the closing remark. Now, for the smooth organization of this event, I would like to mention a few points. First, please note that the session is being recorded and the recording will be available on the website of the event. For asking your questions, you may please type your questions in the Q&A button, which is at the bottom of your screen. Use that one to submit your questions anytime during this webinar. Due to limitation of the online format as well as time constraint, we will allow some of you to ask questions directly to the panelists. For this, I will request the host to switch on your camera and mic so that you can ask the question. If you like to share a good practice or a good example, please mention it in the Q&A. We will open your mic and camera so that you can speak. I once again extend a warm welcome to all of you. And now I invite Mr. Srinivas Reddy, Chief of the Skills and Employability Branch, ILO, for giving the opening remarks. Floor is yours, Mr. Reddy.
Thank you very much, Ashwani. Thank you all for joining. Very good morning, colleagues and friends. It's my great pleasure to extend a warm welcome to all the experts and assessors on RPL from the African continent. Friends, this theme and objective of this webinar are very, very timely. In fact, for us at ILO headquarters and in the field all over, Africa is a priority for us. For the simple reason, this continent has the tremendous human resources potential that need to be developed and capacitated to utilize the opportunities that the world throws. So therefore, for the ILO, it is nothing but natural to work with all of you to support the human resource development and skills development of all the young people and adult workers throughout the continent in all the member states across all the subregions and regions of Africa. Therefore, I'm very, very happy to join you all today to say a few words and begin this webinar. As you all know, in Africa, the RPL, recognition of prior learning, has been gaining momentum and recognition in the recent years, as many countries have been adopting policies, frameworks, and mechanisms to facilitate its implementation. RPL, of course, you know better than me, can help address some of the major challenges facing the continent, such as low literacy rates, skills gaps, unemployment, poverty, and inequality. However, RPL also faces some challenges. RPL, in fact, if done well, can empower learners, especially those who are marginalized, disadvantaged, or vulnerable, by giving them access to further education and training opportunities, enhance their employability and career prospects, and boosting their self-confidence and motivation. Thus, colleagues, I believe that RPL is not only a technical or administrative process, but also a social justice imperative. However, as you all know, RPL faces some significant barriers and challenges in Africa, such as lack of awareness, understanding, and acceptance among stakeholders, insufficient resources and capacity, inadequate quality assurance and accreditation systems, and limited recognition and portability across borders and sectors. Therefore, there is a need for strong advocacy, collaboration, and innovation to overcome these obstacles and to promote RPL as a strategic priority for the continent. I'm glad that the ILO, the African Development Bank, and SASASNet are collaborating to organize this webinar of the Skills Bridge Masterclass series titled Innovations and Strategies for RPL in Africa to develop the capacity of RPL experts and assessors in Africa. I really want to thank each one of you for your time this morning and for your interest and collaboration with the ILO. I strongly encourage you to take full advantage of this masterclass by sharing your experience and innovative solutions to modernize RPL systems in the continent. Thank you all very much, colleagues and friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reddy, for very giving great insights into the issue of RPL and its importance in Africa. And also thanks for your blessings for the whole program and your from your heart, the support you are giving to the African countries from the ILO side. Thank you very much once again. All the participants, let me also mention to you, African Development Bank, though is a partner in this webinar, the only reason why they are not present here, because the African Union's annual summit has started. And for that, they are participating there. So for that, they have specifically given they mentioned their apologies that they are not able to join, but they are with us in this whole masterclass. Now with this one, it's time to start the panel discussion. And let me introduce you to our expert panel. I will request all the three panelists, experts, to please switch on their camera. So let me introduce you first with Mr. Martin Kent. He's an eminent expert on many subjects, sector skills bodies, RPL, and many other issues on the skills, and is based in UK. And he has worked extensively in Africa. Then we have Mr. Kailash Algu. He was the director of Mauritius Qualification Authority and an esteemed expert on overall skills and lifelong learning systems. He has worked in many and supported work in many countries in Africa. Then our third expert is from the ILO, Mr. Albert Ukal. He has also worked in many countries, particularly in the Eastern Africa and Northern Africa, and he has supported countries in developing innovative systems of RPL and apprenticeships, particularly in some of the countries. Thank you to all three of you for joining this one. Now, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, we will start with first posing few questions to the panelists, which have been taken from the questions submitted by the participants online. So I will start with the first question that is addressed to Mr. Kailash Algu. It is the first question comes always that many employers and individuals do not consider RPL, or they are not having the complete awareness or do not consider it is very valuable. So question is, how can RPL providers create awareness among employers about the benefits and create demand for RPL?
Thank you, Ashwani. Good afternoon, good morning to everybody. I'm so pleased to be here amongst you this afternoon, and greetings from Mauritius. Very important questions which you have put, Ashwani, is regarding this partnership with employers. Now, whenever we develop any system for RPL, I think employers is one of the main stakeholders in the whole ecosystem for RPL. Therefore, if we already have some partnership with the employer associations or industry associations or even the Chamber of Commerce, because in some of the African countries, we do not have employer associations. And some countries, of course, not the industry associations are not so strong. But all countries have some sort of associations where the employers are regrouped nationally. And I think what is more important whenever we are developing this system is to make sure that we establish very good connections with these associations. We need to conduct, and this is where I think this very close relationship between the provider of RPL and the associations is important, is they can conduct joint awareness campaigns. They have to make people know what is RPL, how will RPL benefit them, what is the prospects of RPL candidates, whether they are in employment or not in employment. They can also join these associations in webinars like we are doing now. They can have workshops on RPL, which can be organized jointly by the provider, RPL provider, and the associations. And these can promote all these workshops, webinars, and awareness campaigns is to promote actually the benefits of RPL. And what we have been doing actually is having some PowerPoints also during their assemblies. Very often these associations, they would be meeting their members. So it is the duty of the provider, actually, RPL provider, to ensure that they can join into the meetings and make presentations on RPL or small short videos which they have done on RPLs. Now, the other important aspect where you can have this collaboration also with these organizations is to develop this what is known as the industry-specific case studies. For example, I will take one example which I did here was in the hospitality industry, where we RPL'd one person and he became actually the front office manager of a very large group in Mauritius. So we used this video and his interview to showcase, to what is Association for Hospitality and Restaurant in Mauritius. So showcasing, the positive impact on the workforce actually brings in some more interest, brings in more motivation, be it from the other stakeholders or the employer side. One other important aspect also which you can consider would be to collaborate on the creation of promotional materials and resources tailored for the different sectors, of course, and highlighting the advantages of hiring, people with RPL. We've developed brochures or, small flyers on RPL, which can be distributed to the community.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kailash, for, I think you have mentioned a very important point of not just by theoretically saying, yes, what are the benefits of RPL or something, but really showcasing the real life stories. I think the real life stories can make the big difference when people can see themselves and then they will believe. By just preaching, I think is not enough. That is important, but not enough. Thank you very much for giving this very good example from Mauritius. I'll go to Albert now with the similar question. So Albert, he talked about from the more formal sector, but you have also worked intensively in the informal economy also, in many which dominates in many countries in Africa. So how does RPL benefit workers in the informal economy? Because that's what the question many times workers ask. Can you share an example from a country?
Thank you, Ashwani, for that very relevant and valid question. I think we've seen in literature on the benefits of RPL to the beneficiaries and also the RPL candidates. But I want to just complement what Kailash just mentioned, and I want to give an example of Tanzania. I will start with a small story whereby the government of Tanzania a few years back realized that the public investment projects were not integrating workers in the informal economy. And one of the major barriers at that time was that the procurement processes did not allow any worker who do not have formal qualification to participate or benefit from these public projects. So when at that time the ILO was experimenting on recognition of prior learning with the national partners, and when through some of the various sessions when the government saw the relevance that RPL can bring in by providing qualifications to informal workers who were competent and were skilled, then they immediately made the link. So over a period of 3 to 4 years, the government started funding RPL assessment and certification, and the workers who were going through that particular program were actually now able to access work in these formal public and private projects, which were big and large also in that particular country. So this has actually become one of the, I would say, one of the major benefits for RPL in Tanzania, whereby previously inaccessible employment opportunities are now accessible through RPL qualification and certification. And the government did not end there. They also decided that smaller projects, for example, hospitals, rural hospitals that were being funded by municipal authorities, they were now being awarded to skilled artisans who already were participating in the labor market in doing this construction work, but could not be awarded these contracts because they didn't have qualification. So the government made it as a policy directive that smaller projects such as schools constructions, hospital constructions would be made accessible to artisans, but with the conditions that they have to have qualifications. That was now made available through recognition of prior learning. And the same goes to construction of school desks and so on and so forth. So through that angle, Tanzania has managed really to integrate RPL certification into the broader policy employment promotion strategy in that particular country.
Thank you very much, Albert. I think kindly all the participants, please note very important point which Albert has mentioned here. RPL only is not sufficient if we are to produce an impact, particularly for the workers working in the informal economy. That government also linked how these certified, qualified people, artisans, can better contribute to the economy and benefit from here. So that they made them eligible to participate in the public contracts. So whenever government was giving contracts, so because there was a condition that you have to be qualified, so these artisans became eligible. And I visited together with Albert in one or two places. So, and I have seen there the person, Albert, it was doing, I think, the interiors or something, contractor. So earlier that person was like just a worker, but now he became a contractor and further employing 20 persons. And he got all 20, made them go through the RPL process, got them certified also. So that and then he created a big company that with qualified artisans who are eligible, then company was eligible to participate in public tenders. And he was doing the public works. So these are very success stories for everyone to know and go further. Now, I know the two participants have raised their hand, Joy and Fred. But before we come back, I'll come back to you in the next round. But I will request you in the meantime to type your questions on the Q&A tab, both of you, so that we also read and see whether these questions we are already asking or not. Thank you to you. Now I'll come to Martin now with the third question, which is also important. What happens? Suppose 100 participants apply for the RPL process. Out of that, say 50 pass and 50 do not pass. But those who are not successfully completed doesn't mean they doesn't have the skills. There must be some skills gaps are there. But now they want to know how they can upgrade their skills so that next time they can appear in the exam again, RPL process, and get the certificate. So Martin, the question is that how can upskilling programs be made accessible to RPL candidates to address their skills gap?
Thanks, Ashwani, and hello to everybody. As you say, it's an important aspect of RPL, even though it's not formally part of the RPL process, and it's often an attractive part because actually, not only is it for those people who might not have met the standard, but also there's the opportunity to train and link training in addition to the RPL process, and whether it's about expanding the skills, whether that's about upgrading particular skills such as sort of modernization, or whether it's specializing such as tailoring, focusing on things like embroidery, or agro processing, looking at packaging and export processing, it can be really valuable. And I think it also comes back to often we're looking at skills quite tightly, but actually increasingly the standards are broader and taking more about entrepreneurial skills, work readiness skills, which for some people they might not have that breadth. So there's a real opportunity through this. And I think there's two things to consider. I think one is about promotion, and Kailash has spoken eloquently about the importance of really demonstrating real life examples of people to show the benefits it's had to them, that actually the opportunity to upgrade those skills is really valuable. But I think then the other issue is really about accessibility. And I would say it's about taking any grit out of the system. So it's making it as easy as possible. So partly it's about making sure the training is timely. So it's not waiting 6 months or 9 months after the initial assessment, but actually it can happen quite soon after the assessment to to keep the momentum going for the individual. Cost is clearly a factor, and it's about looking at really making sure that the cost is minimized. But also the location, the fact that people are not having to travel quite a long way to be able to access the training, and that it can be as accessible as possible. But also, facts comes about local languages, and just removing any barriers or perceptions that people might have, that it's as easy as possible, but also that they can see the real benefits of the training.
Thank you. I think just to see very important 4 points, if I, as I recall from Martin's response, kindly participants note down 4 important points he has mentioned. First, availability, timely availability of the upskilling and reskilling program. And second is cost. Who is going to share and bear the cost? Location. And the fourth one, last, Martin, what you said also, there's another 4th point which I'm just forgetting.
I think it's about local language as well.
Local language in which the learning will take place. Out of this language, I see sometimes is not the biggest challenge out of 4. The biggest challenge comes to me always the first, availability, because each person may have a different kind of a skills gap. So now, are the skills systems flexible enough to offer customized training, learning? That's a big challenge. Then also comes the cost also. We'll discuss this question, particularly the cost. It will be one of the next questions. So now going to the next question. This is also asked by policymakers or other persons, while employers and individuals ask what is the benefits to them. But policymakers sometimes ask, okay, how they can measure the success that RPL is success or making impact. So Kailash, you have been in the government, you have been heading the qualifying authority also. So what key performance indicators should be used to assess the success of RPL strategy? I will request you to slightly take less time because so that we can take more questions also. Kailash, to you.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, Ashwani. Actually, before I answer this question, I think there is an important aspect which we all should know regarding, KPIs. How do we measure success if we do not have data? So data keeping actually, and this is one of our weaknesses, which I have found in many of our countries. We don't keep the right data, and the data are not actually also readily available. So first of all, I think it is important that data is kept so that it can be retrieved whenever needed. In this connection, I think when we talk about success in RPL, how we can measure it, first of all, of course, it would be enrollment in terms of numbers. How many people are getting enrolled in RPL? Secondly, it could also be the completion rates, because as you mentioned yourself, not everybody would go through the whole process. Some of them might be getting only partial qualification. Some may be getting full qualification, some may get partial qualification, and some may not get any qualification at all. So, all this data is quite important for us if we want to really measure the success of RPL. Now, the other point also which could be of importance is the placement rates and success in obtaining employment, or, as mentioned by Albert, loans. When we want to start our business, does this certificate which we obtain through RPL, is it recognized, especially by banks if we are to get loans? Is it recognized by the employers if we are to get employment? The other point which I would also maybe request our participants to think about when we talk about success rates and KPIs would be about the employer satisfaction. with the RPL graduates? Are the employers really satisfied with the people who have gone through the RPL system? And then we can also monitor the demand for RPL among employers and general public. Is the demand increasing? Is it stagnant? Is it decreasing? What is happening? This gives us an idea about the success of RPL in our country. These are just a few points, Ashwani. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kailash. Now, before going further, I draw attention of Kailash and Albert. There are two questions asked by Geoffrey on the Q&A. If you tap on that one, the second question you can maybe answer, and the first question is specifically addressed to Albert. But Albert, before that, taking your question, I think let me ask you the next question because it's addressed to you. Albert, are you ready?
Yes,
Hello,
I'm ready, but I'm unable to see the question. Sorry,
No,
I'm still looking.
No, I'm saying that
okay.
question Q&A you look into later on because next
Okay.
question is addressed to you. So I'm
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, so the next question is that it refers to the same challenge which has been mentioned by the Martin. When the reskilling comes, reskilling is the second part, but even for the assessment part, RPL assessment, is a cost. There is a cost involved for the assessment. And now, how the individuals could be from different background, some from disadvantaged groups, informal economy, some from companies, and not enough buy-in of the RPL is still there in many countries from the employers or government. So broadly, there are three stakeholders who can bear the cost. Apart from, of course, there could be some others also. So how you think? Of course, there's no one single solution which can be applicable to every country or every situation. But still, what are your thoughts about how to share the cost of RPL between the government, employers, and individuals RPL candidate? Albert, to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ashwani. I think first I agree with you that there's no one single approach that fits all situations or all country context, and this is because different countries are at different stages of establishing RPL systems. Secondly, there are variations in terms of the candidates that are participating in the RPL assessment and certification. So, and then thirdly, it's many countries do not have or have not transparently shared the approaches that they're using to fund the RPL systems. But generally speaking, it is true that that an RPL system, to be successful and to be sustainable, it has to have a clear funding mechanism. And so many countries are using different approaches to do so. The first approach that is that we find common in many countries that are already implementing RPL system is funding RPL through public sources. Meaning that budgetary allocations that are specifically targeting RPL programs in the country. As I said, it depends on the incentive and the reason why a country wants to establish an RPL. Then other countries are also utilizing the resources from the private sector. And here I want to elaborate a little bit. So the private sector could directly fund, RPL candidates, especially if the candidates are one of their employees, and therefore they would foot the bill for RPL assessments. But they also can support RPL assessment and thereby reduce costs or share costs by providing materials for RPL assessment in the context where the assessment is practical and where there are consumables. And Kenya, for example, is currently, piloting their RPL system, and one company in Kenya, which after training its workers for many years, and when they acquired the competencies and skills, but did not have a qualification, when they heard of the RPL mechanism that the Kenyan government is introducing, they decided to foot the bill to make sure that all their workers who are trained in that company were assessed, and this company paid for the assessment processes all the way from guidance to assessment and certification. And so this is one excellent way through which private sector can also contribute. In other countries also, to make sure that RPL candidates themselves see value in the RPL assessment and certification, they are also required to pay a small fee as part of the contribution to the costs that are being directly. Countries such as South Africa are collecting levies from private sector, and these levies is used to support skills development, including RPL assessment and certification programs. So there are different modalities from different countries. And as I said, sometimes when the country is still very young, you find that the bill is footed by development partners. I know many projects that ILO are funding as part of building the capacity, but also raising awareness on the importance of RPL to the country institutions, so that later on they can pick that up.
Thank you very much, Albert. I think you raised very, very comprehensively and gave some specific examples how different countries are doing and can do also. As I think dear participant, as you know, it's very important to note that the costing, there are two types of cost. One is a direct cost for assessment, which is to meet the cost of means testing, assessment, and before that, all those things the authority, that assessment authority has to done, awareness creation, providing guidance, counseling, scrutinizing. Also, all these things are cost to the authority who is conducting the assessment. Then what about the cost to others? There is a cost for the individual also. Even if the government says there is no cost to the assessment, you can come free, still they has to incur some cost, because there is an opportunity cost. Opportunity cost means the person may have to spend few days, if some time in the actual assessment, but a lot of time in the preparation for the assessment also. And think about if a person is self-employed or working in the informal economy, the person may or may not get support from the employer. Or self-employed means, so that means he has to forego his opportunity cost, so which has also a value. So when we are similarly when we are calculating cost sharing, we should calculate the cost, every cost. Then only the government and employer will think, oh, even though they are not, sometimes government think or employers think, oh, we are not charging any money for the assessment, but then every individual is still incurring a lot of cost in preparation for the assessment and the time required and traveling and other things also. So all these factors also need to be considered. Now, Albert, actually, there's one open question to you. As we go to the other panelists, you can look at that one. If you press on the Q&A tab, it is on the open question one. Jeffrey, who has asked these two questions, Kailash has already answered one of the questions. So you can read that question also if you click on the answered question, is there already. Similarly, other participants, if they want to see what are the questions asked by some other participants and how they are answered, you can read. And as some of you are asking on the chat again and again, and my colleague Livia is already confirming, yes, the whole recording will be available, and we will send you the link of the website where you, after 2 or 3 days, you can access the whole recording of the event, and you can go through again and you can share with others also. Now, my next question is to, or before going to Martin, let me just request Livia. Livia, can you give the access to Fred on the so that he can ask one of the questions? He's raised his hand since a long time. Fred, very soon you will be able to switch on your camera and mic. Then it will allow you to ask the question. In the meantime, as the Fred is coming online, I'll ask the next question to Martin. So Martin, Fred will allow you, your question will be next after the Martin responds to another question. And Martin, this is links to the last question which we're asking Albert about how to share the cost. But then again, as we were discussing, there are many elements to the cost also. So now, on one hand, yes, sharing the cost is important, but at the same time, RPL assessment is also expensive. It could be individualized also sometimes, and sometimes locations. It could be away the location for either the assessor or the person has to travel long distances also. So what are your thoughts that how to make RPL assessment process less time consuming as well as reduce cost? And what could be the role of technology in this process?
Thanks, Ashwani. I think
Yes,
technology.
Just a minute. Fred, can you just keep your mic off for the timing? I'll come back to you after Martin. Thank you very much, Fred. Martin, please go ahead.
Thank you. I think technology has real potential to, I think, just revolutionize the whole process. But I think we often don't consider it because one, we do think it's going to be costly, and that's about upfront costs. We think about the lack of infrastructure and just the cost for individuals to get Wi-Fi and bandwidth. But I think, you know, it can be a sort of a cost-effective way in terms of just ongoing costs to reduce some of the resource that's required. And we know already that across the continent, there's so many technological innovations. We see it with mobile banking, with mobile shopping and other aspects that actually, I think it's important to consider the role of technology within the RPL process, as you say, to widen access, but also to reduce some of those costs. And I think partly it's about actually just unpacking the whole of the RPL process and seeing, well, what aspects could be, with technology could be introduced. And I think there's some sort of key aspects that you could experiment with and pilot with alongside more traditional methods to see to what extent can they then be rolled out, could they be expanded upon. And I think some of those include the upfront administration. I think one of the big bureaucratic sort of bottlenecks with RPL can be all the information that needs to be collected up front, whether that's about official status and ID, or whether that's previous documents. Actually, all of that could be done much more technologically by people uploading information. The way in which people are communicated in terms of preparing for assessments, that could be done through WhatsApp groups, so it doesn't have to be that costly, and can be much quicker and agile than doing more sort of formal processes. But then, you know, taking it up a scale, there's obviously question banks and other things that could be used. And also quality assessment could be videoed as well, so you could actually watch and demonstrate that somebody can actually do physical things. So, you know, technology can be introduced in certain parts, and actually it can be helped to reinforce the quality of the process. There's clearly challenges there around digital literacy. So I think it's important that technologies run alongside more traditional methods. But actually, I think it is around then working with perhaps, you know, I know from my experience in the Gambia, there's some fantastic coders coming out of the education sector. How can quality assurance agencies work with perhaps university or with TVET institutions to give the students opportunities to develop apps or systems that can help support some of these processes, which can be a much more cost-effective way of doing it and provides the students with some practical opportunities to develop, you know, real-life apps that will be used day to day. So I think there's some of the considerations to sort of think about with technology.
Thank you very much, Martin, for this one. Now Fred is there. Fred, can you switch on your camera and mic, please?
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Thank you, Aswani. I'm Fred Oanda from Kenya. I'm working with the TVET Authority. My question just goes straight to issues on micro credentials or partial certifications. We have seen situations where in our Kenya qualification framework, we have those claimants or who want to be candidates in either level 5 or level 6, which is a kind of diploma. But we have issues that where this micro-credential is level 6, that is where we find it in our curriculum, but this person does not have the numeracy or literacy skills. And yet, in our qualification framework, the literacy and the numeracy are very critical elements for one to be able to be certified in level 5 or level 6. So how do we then go about it in this context? And yet they have deficiency in numeracy and literacy, which is a requirement for those higher level qualifications in the framework, in a micro-credential.
Thank you very much, Fred. You asked a very important question. This is typically happens. It's not only for the, you're using the term micro-credential for the partial qualification, okay? But in case of, this is a typical case where the candidates who are coming for assessment, they will not meet the whole requirement of the qualification. Sometimes it is numeracy, literacy, sometimes it is also technical competencies also. Maybe who would like to take, any of the panelists like to take this, or who would like to answer this question?
Thank you. Actually, it's a very big challenge, Ashwani. You know, when we talk about micro-credentials, it depends whether Kenya has already approved the micro-credentials on their own national qualifications framework. I think that would be the first step. But the second step is also which qualification is being offered by the authority or the providers for RPL. And in many cases, you will find that, you know, the smaller, what we call the smaller qualifications which are offered and as well recognized on the framework. It might be that, you know, these people are qualified for a certain job, but they are not fully qualified for the whole qualification. But in this case, of course, it has to be one of the aspects which we have considered would be to have a statement of results attached together with the certificate which is issued with the RPL certificate. So when you have this statement of results, in that one, you can detail what are the skills, what are the competences which the person actually has for that particular qualification or micro-credential. I think that can solve a little bit of the problem. But the person is not entitled to the whole qualification because he doesn't have the literacy and the basic numeracy that is required. Thank you.
Maybe I answered it. Thank you very much, Kailash, for clarifying this one. Dear Fred, you know, RPL is not a shortcut. We have to remember, if we go by, understand the definition, actually RPL is not even a training process. It's a process by which if person is qualified, in case a person is competent and meets the learning outcomes or competencies specified in a qualification, then, and if for some reason person doesn't have that qualification, it is only a process to facilitate acquisition of that qualification which the person deserves. Now, in this process, what we are now coming up with the issues that if a person is doesn't deserve that qualification for whatever reason, whether it's numeracy, literacy, or some technical competency or some other theoretical inputs, then qualification simply cannot be granted. That means then the next process is, that's what we are discussing right from the questions we discussed already, this challenge. There will always be requirement of some kind of a upskilling programs, because most candidates will not be able to meet the full requirement of a qualification through experiential learning only. They can meet part qualification, micro-credential or something, but very rarely they will be able to meet. And that's I think that's I'm sure many experts from the country level are there. They can mention also percentage of people who got the full qualification is very low. Most people got part qualification, module qualification, they call whatever they call. The simple reason, So that piece, if the system has to facilitate the acquisition of full qualification, there has to be learning elements. They have to already think about how some kind of a learning elements can be incorporated or can be as a policy measure. While RPL is not about training and reskilling, but as a skill system is the responsibility to train and make more and more people qualified for the labor market needs. So as a policy, skills policy, then the policymaker has to think how to complement, how to link RPL more integrated with the whole training and learning system on that one. But there's no shortcut. Sorry, we cannot just give qualification because a person still doesn't deserve it. So we have to make that person competent and then deliver the qualification. Now, I think we can see that it was very interesting to allow the participant to ask the questions. If any other participant, like Fred has asked, if they like to ask directly the question to the panelists, please raise your hand. We will allow them. Or you can still use Q&As. Many participants are still using Q&A. They are typing the question and getting the answers you can see from our panelists already. So if there is there's still an opportunity. If some participants wants to ask directly the question like Fred has asked, please click on the raise hand. There's a bottom of the screen, you can see raise hand, click on that one. Now I can see one person. So Livia, can you allow Niamai to have so that she can speak and open her mic camera also.
The plan is being developed from the curriculum. Curriculum.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know whether I am able to be seen.
Just a minute. So is it? Can you say your name, please? Who is this one? We are not able to see your picture.
Yeah, Aswani?
Yes.
Miss Nyamai Wambua, I don't know where my camera is.
Okay, no problem. We can hear you very well. You can ask the question. Please go ahead.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So I am the head of programs and linkages for an umbrella informal sector organization in Kenya called the Kenya National Federation of Jua Kali Associations. Jua Kali associations are basically skilled artisans in the informal sector here in Kenya. So I just wanted to ask Kailash, probably you could give us, what do you think is the best RPL system in Kenya and even in the world out of your own experience or even opinion? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jawai. Actually, what I've just mentioned, I've just written to you as well on the chat box. There is no best system, actually. You have to look at the particulars of the country where you are implementing a model. And you have to learn, of course, from all the best practices which we have in the world. But there is not one model that can fit. And this is where I would say to all RPL practitioners, do not just cut and paste. It may work in some countries, but it might not work in your own country. So do not cut and paste and do not copy whatever is working in some other countries. You have to make sure that it is typical to what you have done and what are the realities of your country. Just to give you one example, one of the assessors in Madagascar is actually from the anti-corruption unit. I mean, why do we put an anti-corruption officer in the list of assessors? It is because the stakeholders in Madagascar asked me, they said, we would like to ensure that we have a credible and robust system implemented in Madagascar. So when we developed the model for Madagascar, just to make sure that the stakeholders are happy and they trust the system, we had to put actually an officer from the anti-corruption unit on the assessors on the list, because normally we have a panel of assessors. So we had to put one officer from the anti-corruption on the list of assessors. So as I mentioned, it depends on the different contexts of the country, really. In Mauritius, when we did develop the context, actually the RPL model, we used both the English system and the French system, because Mauritius actually is bilingual. It is both English, Anglophone, and Francophone. So when we developed the system, we found that there was a lot of similarities which could be used from the French system. So we incorporated a lot of the French system into our Mauritian model. So as I mentioned, it depends on the particularities of the country, specific country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kailash. Now you can see, dear participants, we have a mixed method of asking questions and answering the questions. We have preset of the questions which we asked. We had Q&A tab, and then some of the participants asked directly. So I will, as we are coming to a close of the program, maybe, and we have seen that there a lot of enthusiasm is there. Maybe if our panelists are available, can we extend the partner session by 15 minutes or 20 minutes? Okay, thank you. And those participants who like to stay back, please stay back. And those who have other business meetings, you can leave. We will still continue for another 15-20 minutes. I will still encourage other participants to ask some specific problem or challenge they are facing in their when they are doing the RPL. Please ask those questions. Or in case you have some good story example, like our panelists for sharing, please raise your hand. We will allow you to share that story. But in the meantime, I will go to the Martin now. Martin, as we are seeing, very important, as we know that quality assurance, ensuring quality as is very crucial in the RPL process. Of course, Kailash gave another different example of corruption issue, but here we are not going to corruption issue. We are seeing the RPL assessors are the key persons who are doing the assessment. Now, the question is that how do we ensure basically that professional development program certification be put in place to ensure high quality, be put in place for the RPL assessors to ensure high quality in assessment practices. Over to you, Martin.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a critical question because I think there's two issues to think about. One is getting the right technical people who have got the gravitas and who can provide that assessment with the technical know-how for somebody with a lesser standard. And for some areas that's tricky, particularly with new technology and particularly new areas coming on board. Does the country have sufficient people with the skills and the experience and the credentials to be able to do that assessment? The second element, I think, is around just the assessment itself and about the training and the quality assurance that even though that individual might be technically competent, actually, are they being objective in their assessment? Are they following through the process? So I think it's about the combination of those two things coming together. That can obviously be done through initial training, through assessing to make sure that the people, the assessor and the quality assurance have got that standard. But I think it's also around opportunities for regular CPD, that the individuals are constantly coming together to share their experience, to ensure that there is consistency, but also that the qualification or quality assurance agencies are regularly monitoring the assessment to make sure that that standard is being maintained. And if required, providing additional training or sort of putting the assessor through an update to make sure that they're still meeting that level. But it's an ongoing process.
Thank you very much, Martin. I think this brings to my mind, normally for the teachers and trainers, many countries or most countries have some qualifications that if you have to become the teacher or a trainer, you need to have a specific qualification. But what about the RPL assessors? Now we have many participants from many countries here. So this question is addressed to all the participants first. Is any of your country has a specific qualification or certification which assessors should have before they can do RPL assessment? If yes, just click on the bottom at the raised hand, click on that one. I will count. You can alpha, you can see also. There doesn't seems to be an example, but let me turn to our panelists. Are you aware of any country which has a specific certification for RPL assessors?
Yes, in the case of France, we have actually some programs which are run by the ministry, where they certify the assessors and even the facilitators. Myself, I have had, when we started RPL some 25 years ago, I had to travel abroad to be certified as a facilitator and assessor for RPL. So yes, I know of one of the countries which have a formal certification program is France.
Thank you very much, Kailash, for making this a good example. Now, another question is that, is it required? Should there be policy recommendations that countries should create some kind of a simple certification, not a very elaborate qualification, so that the RPL assessors go through that one, get a certificate that they're certified to do RPL assessment. It could be a simple program for 1 week duration, 2 weeks, 1 week, 2 weeks duration with a certification coming from an authority, which may not be like a national qualification, but a specific certification. So maybe I can see our colleagues, experts are nodding. Maybe let's first go to Albert. Albert, what do you think? Can you switch on your mic, please?
No, thank you. So I just wanted to also say that at least in many countries have put that provision in their RPL, national RPL guidelines and policy frameworks. And I can give an example of Kenya. RPL policy frameworks has that provision. I know they are still at early stages, but I think when the RPL system is full operational, the RPL practitioners will need to be certified. Tanzania, which I gave an example, has an orientation of 7 weeks for the RPL assessors and facilitators before they actually go to the field to support RPL implementation. They are yet to award certificate, but again, they also have a provision for that. And not only trainers and assessors, but also RPL assessment centers as well also needs to be credited. And to come to your question, I think it is important because it is a part of the quality assurance framework that needs to be put in place to make sure that the entire RPL process is monitored and can be checked so that we don't have a system that has porous system in that particular place. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you very much, Albert, for giving very good example of that every RPL assessor before they start assessment has to go an orientation for 7 weeks. Unfortunately, you're saying that perhaps they have not still started giving a certificate. It could be good for the country to issue conduct and as the assessment training program assessment, and then issue a certification that can motivate RPL assessors more, and also ensure that everyone having the same kind of a competence level. Martin, you wanted to say something also on that one.
Yeah, I think in the UK, there's historically been different systems across the UK home nations, sort of England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland. But the essence of it has been that there's a certificate for an assessor, there's a certificate for an internal verifier, so somebody who's quality assuring internally, but also for an external verifier. So those sort of 3 components have all been individually certified to really make sure that there is that quality there. And I think it gives faith to those going through the system that there is that quality requirement, but also some objectivity in the way in which the assessment process has been carried out.
Thank you. Before Olivia has mentioned that Fred perhaps wants to take the floor again. Fred, are you still available, or you want to take the floor, ask a question?
Yes.
Please
I'm
go
not
ahead.
asking a question, but I just want to make comments. Quick
Yeah.
One is the issue of certifying or ensuring that we know who are our assessors, who are our verifiers, It's very important because these people are very key to the RPL process. And as one said that they are to invite the EACC or anti-corruption in the process. I think for all qualification awarding institutions, they have to ensure that their assessors or verifiers sign what we call code of conduct so that they are held responsible to the people whom they actually certify that they are able to get those skills or those competencies, because some of the competencies that we certify are people who are going to work in very critical areas that are very key. And in case if anything happens, then we need to know who did certify this person to be competent in that respect. So the issue of training, capacity building, and the issuance of a certificate showing that you are qualified is very key. The second point I wanted to add on a Kenyan context is that the issue of certifying higher level qualifications is very key for those candidates who claim to have acquired the competencies with respect to the already occupational standards or the curriculum that has been established. A case in point is the issue of cosmetology, where we have students who already have been certified by City and Guilds in hairdressing or beauty and therapy. And in the Kenyan context, level 5 and 6, we have done a curriculum under OS on cosmetology, which combines the two, hairdressing and beauty therapy. So the situation we are mulling and lessons we have learned from the Nyeri National Polytechnic, which is a qualification awarding institution, is that we, as a regulator, we told them for level 5 and 6, if you need to certify somebody who is already having those indications of having gone through the training, then they have really got to sit the actual assessments and also do the practicals in those areas, the formal ones, in those areas, because those are high-level requirements or level descriptors according to the KNQF. And they did that because based on, they have already higher qualifications, they had qualifications from other qualification awarding institutions, but they need a combined certification, which is called cosmetology. So those are very good lessons we have learned, and maybe we'll need to move forward and see how it moves. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. I think all the participants, please note that this format is interesting. They see some of you are coming forward and sharing some examples, asking questions. So we'll encourage others also to come forward and ask some question directly or share some experience from your own country. Now, before I go further, just Albert, there is another question for Tanzania, if you like to look at that one. But I'll go to now Kailash. Kailash, we discussed about this point, particularly the linkages between training, development, and RPL. While RPL strictly is not a training process, but we discussed there's an importance of training for getting an RPL certification, but beyond also RPL certification. So the question is that how to create a seamless transition for individuals between RPL process and further education and career advancement opportunities.
Thank you. Another important question, maybe which we can get views also from our other colleagues who are here participating in this webinar. One important aspect would be the certificate which is issued for RPL. Are we issuing the same certificate to the RPL candidates as the one who has been following a formal course? Are both certificates similar? Or are we distinguishing between people who are getting a certificate through RPL or those going to the formal training? Are they getting a different certificate? My take is that if we are going to RPL the same competences, therefore, the certificate which is issued after the RPL process should be the same as the one who has gone through the formal process. But what we have to ensure also is that the training providers are flexible enough to accommodate the missing occupational standards. Because as we mentioned, not all the people who undergo the RPL process will be getting the full qualification. Some of them, of course, will be getting partial qualification. And therefore, these short courses should be designed. And as mentioned by Martin also, the time factor. We cannot develop a course after a year for these RPL candidates. It has to be, you have to use the momentum that has been gained for these RPL candidates. If they are missing certain occupational standards, some of the training providers must be willing and immediately provide these short courses so that these people have the choice to either complete it through a formal training, or they can go back to their place of work and, of course, complete the missing occupational standards. One of the examples which I can share with you was the one in Madagascar, where the university actually is the IST of Tana, which is one of the most prestigious actually higher education institution in Madagascar. What they did was they prepared the short courses before even embarking on the RPL. So they had the short courses ready. And one of the examples, because they were offering higher qualifications of higher education. So what they did, a couple of courses like methodology in research was a compulsory module for all RPL for all RPL candidates. But they had already prepared the other modules even before they completed the RPL whole process for the RPL candidates, which means that the modules were ready-made. So once the candidate finishes and he doesn't get the full qualification, he already has a possibility to go back to IST and complete the qualification.
Thank you very much, Kailash. This is very, very interesting, and it reminds me again a similar example in Tanzania. Now, Tanzania, of course, Albert is answering a question. In the meantime, Martin, I will invite your attention. There's one last question remaining. Maybe if you like to look into Q&A tab and maybe answer that one, because we are going to finish after this my talk to the panel discussion, and then invite after that SG for the closing remark. So in the meantime, you can answer. Now, in Tanzania also, there are a lot of questions are coming from the participants about the informal economy. A very intensive, a comparison of the tasks done by the persons in the informal economy and the standards of the relevant qualification was done. Complete checklist was, we went together. ILO was supporting the authority, the VETA authority there. So we went together with them. And in the informal economy, they did the checklist and everything. And then they found that, very importantly, that what they call level 1 qualification was much more broad enough what a mechanic or person does in a informal sector. So that means even the person may be very qualified, competent to do tasks, will not pass the level 1 qualification also if of the 3 years program, level 1, level 2, level 3, because in the level 1 also qualification was broad enough. For example, it was requiring some kind of a machining operation, for example, for motor vehicle mechanic, even some kind of a drilling machine operations, lathe machine operations, basic operations. But in an informal economy, a motor mechanic never does this kind of a task. So that person may not have the competency. So that means to make RPL successful, because qualifications are always developed from the perspective of learning perspective. How to learn from broad base to narrow down a specialization. So the logic of qualifications, the learning process is different. Basics, complex. Of course, ultimate with the full qualification, it will be similar. But in a labor market, it doesn't happen same manner. Whether in a formal economy or informal economy, persons do specific tasks only. A occupation required. Then there is another mechanic or other artisan to do something else. So this is a bit dichotomy. How? So that means naturally there will be, just by experiential learning is very, very difficult to meet the competency requirement of a qualification. So that's what this question is about. There has to be a inbuilt program already thought by the policymakers to combine RPL and learning and training and development program, because there will always be gap. Here we are not talking about the qualitative gaps. Here we are talking about the competencies gap, because the labor market requirements are slightly different than the qualification standards. So this is basic. First difference is there. Second difference could be in terms of quality. While working in a workplace, it may happen the tools available there, the setup available there, technology and things there may not be of the sufficient standard as required by the of a qualification, because at the time of development of qualification, they might have incorporated better technology, better quality processes, which in a marketplace may not be available. So the qualitatively there will be gap between the competence of the person and that required by the qualification standards. So that means to make RPL very successful, and so that more and more people can acquire the full qualification, so that if they want to go for further education training, there is a need for policymakers to make the skill system more flexible and responsive to needs. And that is also, besides RPL, this is also a requirement of as the things are changing very, very fast in the world of work. We have lifelong learning has become imperative, and lifelong learning means there has to be quicker, faster response from the labor market to offer the training in demand, and anticipate what kind of skills will be required, how they can, and then they have to think about new methodologies to deliver, and learning processes also. Same method may not be work in the new era of lifelong learning. So these are the fundamental issues which has to be addressed by, not by the RPL system, as a skills system, as a skills and lifelong learning system as a whole. And as Kailash was mentioned, similarly in the Tanzania also, they designed, after considering all these factors, they already designed a 2 weeks program. A 2 weeks program which they already identified based on their experience. These are the normal skills gap, which were minor, but crucial skills gap were always there between most of the candidates and others. So even if the candidate was successfully completing the program, they made a condition that those candidates who have successfully completed the assessment, still before they get the certification, they had to undergo a 2 weeks standard program, which was conducted free of the cost by the training authority, so that the training authority is more confident and also understands that these persons can meet the more requirement of standards and labor market better. But then there are different practices are there. There are always pros and cons. So with this one, I again like to thank you all the participants. But before we have the most important part now, I'll invite now, first of all, thank all the panelists, experts who have taken their time and shared their experience and wisdom for this one, and all the participants who actively participated. But I will invite now Secretary General of the SASASNet. I'll request Mr. Usman to please switch on their camera and mic, and I'll request other panelists to please switch off your camera. So Mr. Usman Sila is the Secretary General of SASASNet. SASASNet full form is Skills and Sub-Saharan Africa Skills and Apprenticeship Network. And these, together with many stakeholders in many countries, they are making huge efforts day and night to establish a network of the countries in Africa, so that the countries can learn from each other. Because one country has some good features, another country has some other good features. Instead of always looking for outside people to come and help, I think it's very important that countries share together with this kind of a vision. And for the Africa people, thank you very much, SASASNet and Mr. Usman Sila, for setting up this network. It is in the beginning stage, and that's why ILO is committed to support it, because ILO's also vision is to support the Africa and African people in improving their competencies, improving their skills, improving their employment and decent work. So, we have similar objective like SASANSAT and ILO. So we have formed a partnership and we are working closely together and supporting each other. So now I request Mr. Usman to deliver his closing remark, not only for this session, but also share his some perspectives, forward-looking perspective, what vision they have and what they're planning to do for the Africa and together with ILO. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Moderator, Dr. Kailash, Dr. Ashwani Agawal. Greetings from the Gambia. I wish to extend the apologies and warm greetings of our chairperson, Professor Idris Bugaje, who, due to exigencies, could not join us in this important session, but all the same would have loved to be with us. I also wish to thank Dr. Srinivas Reddy, who gave the opening remarks, and to also ask him to extend our appreciation and gratitude to ILO for standing by us since our inception in July to establish a strategic partnership as indicated by Ashwani, Dr. Ashwani, that is expected to grow from strength to strength, as it is a strategic partnership of two entities that share common objectives in terms of advancing skills and lifelong learning to benefit our respective countries in Africa and also the African continent. I also wish to thank Dr. Aswani, the moderator of this session, for also being the key interface between SASASNet and ILO, who since our launch has been with us, engaging in strategic thinking, conceiving initiatives that seek to bind the two entities, the two organizations together to accompany each other in the realization of our objectives in serving humanity. Thank you, Dr. Agawal, for being there for both ILO and SASASNet. As you know, this session is the 6th, I believe, of the Skills Bridge Masterclass webinar sessions or series. But the first being sponsored by, or jointly organized by SASASNet, the ILO, and African Development Bank. And we are hoping to have many more of this kind. The next one is even slated to be on the sector skill bodies. In fact, a date was scheduled, but we were just waiting for the outcome of this RPL and to go back to the drawing board to see how to go about it. But I believe there's enough justification for us to proceed with the sector skills body, because as I see it, this session has been a resounding success as far as my assessment is concerned. But before I delve into the remarks further, I also wish to thank our panelists who are well experienced and who I believe have shared perspectives that has brought more clarity in terms of the concepts, the principles, and the approaches that need to be undertaken or understood in order to overcome the challenges facing the countries in implementing RPL. I believe this session is the result of responding to demands of our member countries, the stakeholders in SASASNet, regarding the challenges they are facing in their respective countries in terms of the implementation of RPL. And I believe that this session has gone a long way in helping the stakeholders who participated in this session in terms of their understanding. And I believe that a heavy burden has been lifted. And I believe we're all good to go with what we have learned today. And as indicated by Dr. Ashwani, we benefited greatly from the panelists. But the participants also had shown that they too have things to share that of benefit. So it has been a two-way street in terms of giving and give and take from both the panelists and the participants, as well as on the side of SASASnet. So, like I said, this is just a continuation, not even the beginning, because we've already started this. Like I said, this is not the first engagement that ILO and SASASnet organized to build the capacity of the stakeholders in SASASnet in terms of how to approach skills and lifelong learning in our respective countries to ensure that skills is given the due attention it deserves and the role it should play in terms of helping our countries and the continent to ensure and sustain development for the benefit of the populations of Africa. So, like I said, to conclude, this session has been a resounding success. We've got the best from Dr. Kailash, from Albert, from Fred, and from William, my friend from who's a Gambian, by the way, Martin. He has been with us and has really impacted on the skills Tibet ecosystem in the Gambia by serving a project that was supported by the EU. So, in fact, he's even cited examples from the Gambia. So, Martin, thank you very much as well. And all the participants, that let us brace ourselves that we'll be having more of this capacity building to be able to put in place the necessary systems in our respective countries, of course, through coordination, as SASASnet is the result of the demand by the member countries for a network to be in place that will be assisting our countries to harmonize, to standardize, and to support and promote skills and apprenticeship development. As our mantra is how to formalize the informal sector. RPL is one of the instruments that ensures the formalization of the informal sector. But of course, our bias is on apprenticeship, informal sector. But it's not exclusively informal sector. We are also touching on the formal sector because we are improving the informal sector to be formal. So you also need to work on the formal so that when it is improved, the formal is also standard. So this is the objective of SASASnet, which we share with ILO, and that's why we are partners. We are strategic partners. So we thank ILO for being there with us. In fact, it's the lead partner of SASASnet, because it came at the time when the SASASnet was just being born, and it is accompanying us through the teething phases of our development. And now SASASnet, by the way, is standing on its feet. For your information, I think most of the participants here are aware that it's now a legally registered entity with the commission, the Corporate Affairs Commission, Nigeria, where the organization is domiciled. So we are now good to go to enter into any agreement, any arrangement in terms of MOUs, funding, whatever that is needed in partnerships that SASASnet can now enter into, as it is now a legal entity. We have got the certificate, legal certificate that accords us as a bona fide organization. So that's the good news I want to also bring. Now, we thank ILO, like I said, once again, because the thanking of ILO can never be enough, because they have always been there for us. They are not the only partners of SASASnet. Of course, African Development Bank is also coming on board, and that's why they were targeted to be part of this. They would have loved to be with us, But as indicated by Dr. Agawal, they have also, due to exigencies of situations that they cannot avoid, they cannot be with us, but they are with us in spirit, because they confirm their participation in this series that we'll be organizing jointly. So on that note, Dr. Agawal, I want to, before handing over the floor to you, to thank you once again, and to thank all our panelists for the time they have taken and the knowledge they have shared and the experiences they have shared with our participants. And I believe, like I indicated earlier, our participants are now good to go with what we have learned from this 1.5 hours. In fact, thank you for giving us the bonus. It was scheduled to be 1 hour, but we've extended the 1 hour due to the importance and the proactiveness of the sessions that everybody wanted to participate. But of course, time would not permit it. But we have extended it by I think 30 minutes or so. So thank you very much for also inviting me as Secretary General of SASASNet to come and give the closing remarks. So greetings from the executive of SASASNet as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Usman, for your kind words and sharing some of the progress which is happening at the SASASNet and the vision for the future. And thanks to you to see we had exactly targeted 50 participants, and we had 50 participants for most of the session. And still, even with extended time, we have 40 participants with us still, which is very good. It shows the great interest. I'll request all the panelists, everyone, if they are still available, to switch on their cameras. And then we thank all of you once again, and to all the participants. And this is only a beginning. We'll come up with more and more programs based on to fulfill your needs specifically. Whatever you think is important, we will come with a good solution for that one also. And with these words, I once again like to thank all of you for participating in this event. The recording of this event will be available, and we will send an email informing the web link through which you can access again, or you can share that web link to other people who may be interested to access it also. And my colleague will also send you a separately feedback survey, which will be online. Just you have to click there, so that we get feedback from your side, how you felt about this program, what things you like, or what things can be further improved. Because it's a continuous improvement process. We also like to keep on learning and improving. Thank you very much once again.